What is the nicest thing you've ever done that no one knows about? When I lived in the city, something happened that I'll never forget. An elderly woman in my building, about 90 years old, had her apartment broken into. The thieves took everything: her cash, valuables, and her life savings, around $30,000. The worst part? She didn't have a bank account. She was terrified she wouldn't be able to pay rent and might get evicted, possibly ending up in a state-run nursing home. I couldn't let that happen. So I called the landlord and paid her rent for the next 5 months, covering the rest of the year. I told the landlord not to tell her it was me. But I didn't stop there. I also arranged for groceries to be delivered to her every week for 2 months, so she could rebuild her finances slowly. No one knew it was me. I didn't want her to feel indebted, so I kept my identity a secret. Even though the landlord knew, I told him I would deny it if she ever found out. She posted a thank you letter in the building's lobby, but I quietly took it down and kept it to myself. 7 years later, the landlord still checks in with updates on her. She's still living in the same apartment, and I never told a soul about what I did.
What do you regret finding out? My mother found out she had a lung disease and had about 7 years to live. She suddenly quit smoking. Several years later, she mentioned, "I have this lung issue, but they don't really know where it comes from." She was very elusive because I'm a nurse, and she didn't want me to research her disease and find out she was dying. During the last year of her life, she was on oxygen. I knew she was sick, but I didn't know she was dying. No one did. I knew the time was near, but I thought I had a few more years. She ended up in the hospital, got pneumonia, and died a few days later with me at her side. She knew I would be an absolute wreck if I had known all those years, so she tried to protect me from that. As I sat by her bedside when she was very ill, I could tell she was worried about me. She was dying and still worried about me. Through tears, I told her it was okay to die. I couldn't get the words out completely. I just said, "You're really suffering, aren't you?" And she nodded yes. I said, "It's okay. I will be okay. It's okay too. It's okay. I'll be fine. It's okay too." I couldn't even fully say it, but she knew what I meant. She just nodded yes. I don't know if I wish I had known or not. I kicked out my old parents from my fancy home. So, growing up, my parents had a troubled marriage filled with constant fighting and yelling. They often ignored me to avoid each other, leaving me feeling neglected. When I needed them, they would promise to be there, but then never show up. By the time I was a teenager, I gave up trying to get their attention because they seemed not to care. Things changed when my dad had a stroke when I was 16. Suddenly, my parents tried to be better, especially when my younger brother came along. They became perfect parents to him, which made me jealous towards him, even though it wasn't his fault. I left for college abroad and cut ties with them. Nowadays, we have minimal contact, mainly for my kids' sake. My parents want to visit but expect me to pay for everything, which I refuse. Recently, they found out I bought a big house for my family. They complained about their health issues and hinted they should move in. I told them I wouldn't do that, and they got upset, accusing me of holding on to past grudges. I pointed out they have another son who can take care of them. My daughter's friend is a weirdo. My daughter made a friend at her new school, who I don't like at all. She had to change schools because we moved states. She is in 6th grade, so I told her to use the summer to make new friends at her school. I got a message from a parent last week asking to meet up and let the kids meet. They would be in the same grade, and I thought it would be a good opportunity. We went yesterday at the local pool. I met Melanie, and she wouldn't make eye contact, was very soft-spoken, and overall didn't seem to be paying attention. The kids were playing while I talked to the mom. She has always been in the area and was excited her kid was finally getting a friend. But my daughter came up to me asking to leave early. I found it weird, so I asked her why. Then she told me Melanie freaked her out. She was very touchy, kept pushing her in the water, was whispering random stuff, would stare at people and make comments, and even compared people to bugs. I am still confused on what that means. Caddy told me she was uncomfortable and didn't want to hang out with her again. But when I told her mother our kids aren't a good fit, she harassed me on social media.
What's the worst first date you've ever seen? I was assigned a table on a Friday night and walked over to see a very good-looking guy sitting by himself. He told me he was on a first date with a girl his best friend had a crush on, but still seemed like a pretty nice guy. He was really getting into his story when she finally walked in, and then it all made sense. This girl was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, but as soon as she sat down, he completely changed. He whistled at me like a dog to get them drinks and cut me off multiple times while I took his order. I was taken aback and couldn't help but listen to their conversation from a few tables away. He was acting like an absolute jerk, laughing at his own jokes, interrupting her, and just kept downing shots left and right. After he got up to go to the bathroom, she was on the verge of tears, and I was gonna go talk to her. But before I could say anything, he came back with his friend under his arm, helping him stand. Instead of going back to his table, he starts flirting with a completely different girl before his friend drags him outside. His friend came back and apologized to his date and says he put him in an Uber home. They ended up having a drink together, and before I knew it, she was smiling and laughing with him. By the end of the night, they left together, and I couldn't help but be happy for them. However, right after they left, I saw the original guy come back in. He apologized for being rude and told me it was also his friend could come save the day and talk to her. He said he's a better man for her than me. He set the whole thing up. I was stuck between awe and impressed.